Mumming It. This is Conversation 5 with Lou Gilliland. She's the founder of Courageous Conversations. Today we scratch the surface of motherhood and discuss what leadership looks like at home every single day. Hi Lou.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, how are you?
Pretty good. Mixed. Yeah, it's half-term week, as you know.
Yes, it's hard to do anything in half-term week, basically. Anything. I'm going to start with one question for you. If I was to say, if you had space to talk about anything today, what would it be?
Well, I think honouring that we are in half-term, let's talk about parenting, or perhaps more specifically, mothering and leadership, because as you know, a lot of my work is focused on supporting leaders in the workplace, really building kind of trust-based teams, and this idea of courageous conversations is something that I'm so passionate about. And yet, as I jokingly said to a client the other day, like the real leadership boot camps at home.
Yeah, okay. I would love to have that conversation, and I can definitely relate because I too am a mum of a 3-year-old. I only have one child and I can barely manage most of the time. You said kind of the real leadership boot camp starts at home. Tell me more about that.
So I'm a mum of 2 young boys. I've got Ethan, who's 6, and Isaac, who's 3. And I don't think anything can ever prepare you for the daily lessons, challenges, and joys of parenting, whether you have 1, 2, or even more than 2 children at home. And just like I will coach leaders to think about adapting to the needs of the different people that they lead, we have to do that every day at home. And the intensity and the velocity of the way in which needs are being expressed, and we're having to kind of dance in the moment to adapt to support our children, is so much harder than what I would, typically see as a more kind of controlled, managed adult environment of the workplace. And I think the truth is it feels much higher stakes, at least it does for me, at home, because it's the role that I care about the most, and it's the one that needs the most attention, and it's for sure the hardest.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think it's almost like, for me anyway, I could not understand, although I've been a child, obviously, like you can only relate to motherhood, sounds very simple, once you become a mother, like I couldn't empathize with it in the same way, having been through the experience of having my own child. And there's obviously different stages with that, but raising a child whilst also doing either running your own business or supporting people in very high pressure environments is a real challenge. And I think I agree with what you say. It's not talked about enough. And I wonder if we created more conversations where people understood partly what we're carrying as mothers or parents, like what we could change is just a thought.
Yeah, and I do think, on a positive note, there are more and more resources out there. There are more and more groups being created. I think I'm noticing now that I'm coaching more and more women who are in their kind of late 30s, 40s, who are bringing to the coaching conversation not just what they're working through in the workplace, but there's also things happening at home that need space and time for support. And I am just like them.
In the spirit of like courageous conversations, what do you think the most challenging part, or how does it show up as a challenge for you personally when it comes to being a mum, but also running your own business? Like, how does that challenge present itself in your life?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I've been reflecting a lot, particularly in the last couple of months. Like, my work gives me so much joy. I feel free to really sort of be the best version of myself in my work capacity. And in many ways, it's an escape.
I'm wondering, how does the challenge
So,
of being a mother present itself in your day to day? Like, how does that? We talked about sort of like it's not talked about enough, and the difficulties that people face when they are raising a family, as well as whether it's working or running their own business.
I think a lot of the challenge is about level of resource, like internal resource.
Mm.
So, like, it's a simple equation. If I'm feeling like I've given a lot of energy out during a day, and then I come home and my little people need me, that's often like draining my battery. Like, I'd often say, you know, we've got this like invisible battery inside of us. Are you doing things and spending time with people that charge that battery, or that drain that battery? And absolutely, there are moments where my kids give me lots of joy and energy. But overall, given the age and stage that we're at, and the different needs that I have, it's often more draining than it is energizing. So the challenge comes in being resourced enough to be present, to be able to slow myself down enough so that I'm supporting them from a place of being grounded and understanding, as opposed to being exhausted and reactive. So that's where the challenge lies. And obviously the two of them in parallel, right? They both want and need quality time with me, and making sure that I am like really able to give that to them, as opposed to having given everything to my work context. But as I said earlier, that's often the easier part of my day for me.
It's hard, isn't it? I talk about sugar cubes, which is a similar thing. Almost like you've only got a pot of so much sugar cubes, and you can only give enough out. And once they're gone, they're gone. I guess when it comes to energy, and it's making me think about whether it be recharging your battery or filling up the sugar cube pot. What do you do to recharge?
Yeah, well, I've actually just been to a yoga class, which was fantastic. And for me, movement and exercise is always a non-negotiable. So even if I've been woken up by my little one at 4 or 5 in the morning, and often at that time I then struggle to go back to sleep myself, I will, without fail, do something to move, get exercise, and just kind of get into my body. That's for me, typically at some point during my morning.
Mm.
The Tuesday mornings is my non-negotiable yoga. Then, as I said, like, the irony is I actually do get energy from my work. So actually having great work conversations, it often gives me energy. And then last year I took up a couple of like different hobbies. The first was really kind of asking myself, what can I do where I can be a total beginner, where there's no expectation to do things well, to get it right, where I'm just kind of playing again, permission to have fun and to play. So we took up samba drumming. There's an amazing drumming group near where I live, and they meet, and it's very, very low pressure. It's completely what I described. It's embodied. You can't help but smile. It's just like a joyful kind of embodied practice, part of a community. So that's been really fun. And then the other thing I took up last year, well, I haven't done for the last couple of months, is open water swimming. I said I love movement, but actually swimming in fresh, cold water, surrounded by nature, like there's not really a feeling like it. And I tend to run at least once a week with a good friend of mine, and that's like quality time to talk and move together. So those are a couple of things I do.
Love that. I joined a choir for the same reason. I can't sing. And I remember when Anya was 3, I was feeding her, and I don't know, I was humming along. It was like in the middle of the night, and I was singing something that was in my head. And she unlatched and looked at me, and she might as well have said, like, it was the most degrading look that I'd ever received. And from that moment at 3 a.m., I was like typing into Google, like you do with one hand, how to sing, learn how to sing, learn how to sing when you cannot sing. And then I found this choir group that their motto was loud and proud, strong and wrong. And I thought that sounds like
Yeah,
exactly what I need.
yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and I've been ever since, really, because you can't help but laugh. Like, it's not serious. You're just playing. You're doing it with lots of other people, and I think there is something very, word is quite healing when it comes to sound. Whether it's drumming or whether it's singing, I think there is something that it does something for your nervous system.
I think I've become so much more aware, and I'm trying to be more supportive of my nervous system, of my children's nervous systems, of my husband's, like us as a whole family unit. Like, from what place are we kind of vibing with each other? Which might sound a bit corny, but it's quite profound. My eldest is super sensitive, and we've been really struggling with some of his behaviors over the last few months. And as I've been kind of trying to understand and support him better from different angles, one of the things that a friend had recommended was pediatric osteopathy. And he's had just 2 sessions, but it has been mind-blowing to witness the way that this woman can tap into and support and settle his nervous system. You know, the fact that I even got him there and got him open enough to lie down on a bed with this woman that he doesn't know, holding his head gently with her hand, like that was a huge win. You could just see his body relax. He would start yawning. He just sort of takes everything 5 steps down really quickly. And what I found myself doing while he's lying there is holding his hand and telling him stories. And actually, he doesn't really want me to read from a book. He loves me to tell him made up stories. And it's like it's been this really lovely kind of bonding and connected moment. And because, as we talked about earlier, what your kids feel is what you feel as a mum. We come out the session and I'm feeling all relaxed and yawning, quite tired in a healthy way too, because we're little mirrors of each other, for good and for bad, or for the harder times.
Yeah, absolutely. That's lovely, actually, being able to find something where you can ground yourself or help him to ground and find a moment of connection there. I think that's a really lovely thing. It's making me think. So I've also been quite interested in regulating your nervous system and then acting from a place of composure. And how do you do that? I'm doing a lot of work in that space at the minute. And I've recently, a couple of years ago, last year, the year before, completed like a Reiki practitioner course. So
I remember you saying, yeah.
So it's made me really understand, like, energetically, like, you know, how you can, what that means when you're relaxed energetically and when your body's relaxed. And it really made me understand how, you know, I've been I'd say quite good at connecting with people and talking through cerebrally what their issues are. You know, you do that as a coach and you're trained to observe everything from that, their pitch, their tone, their language, what they're saying, what they're not saying. And you take that and you use it as stimulus to explore something. But actually that kind of work has been surprising in the way that you almost have to park all of that stuff that you've been trained on and the things that you look at, and you learn to read completely differently. And I guess having worked with people in both spaces, it's almost like some people connect quite well through that, you know, through their mind and through conversation. And some people, and they can do both, but connect completely differently when you're accessing whether it's their energetic body or whether it's through their body, like somatically. And I think there's lots of tools that we can use that are underutilized to help us, like, create that sort of inner calm that we're just not used to focusing on. But it feels like a real superpower, whether you use that at home or at work. It's really interesting. Like, you never think pediatric
Osteopath.
osteopath could have such an effect, but to see it in front of you can be, it can be quite interesting.
Yeah, to see it and to experience it almost indirectly.
Mm.
But when my eldest was having a real tantrum, I think it was just a week ago, and I tried something different. I can't remember where I got the idea, but it was like, all right, rather than try and use words and cerebrally talk him through it, how about I use my body with him? So first of all, he looked at me like I was crazy. I was like, right, I'm going to stomp it out. If I'm feeling frustrated, let's stomp it out. And then I just put on one of his favorite songs really, really loudly and started doing this ridiculous dance. And slowly you could see the corners of his mouth just start to smile, because he was looking a bit like, Mum, you look really silly. And, you know, in that day and in that moment, eventually it got him out of it. But, you know, that was for me quite significant, actually trying something quite radically different and allowing myself to be embodied with him and alongside him in a very different way to how we would normally communicate.
It's a bit like the, have you seen the advert where, I don't know, they're in a supermarket and the mum throws a tantrum?
Yeah, I think I have.
It's really good. I haven't quite yet done that, but people often say to me, "Oh, you're so calm." And I appear calm, and I am generally a calm person and a very patient person. I think it helps. But sometimes, if I'm really honest with you, it's a bit like I'm dead on the inside. It's like I've really given up. And there's moments when, it's not within your control. And so we're so used to being able to manage a situation. And I think when it comes to children, actually, sometimes you just can't. Everything has to wait until they've emotionally regulated. And I think like actually finding something where that is quite embodied is it's a great thing. Like whether it's stomping, hitting the ground, screaming into a pillow. My mum used to do this thing, which me and my sister used to think was really weird, but she called it the noodle dance. So whenever she was stressed, and she was a therapist, she would just like jump around in the kitchen and just wiggle her whole body. And I used to think that's a bit weird, but actually it's a really good technique.
Yeah, and that's amazing that you had a mum that was like willing to go there, because I think one of the things that I also really struggle with is that I don't feel like I have the modeling. So to many extents, it feels like I'm sort of making this up on my own. And that's not quite true, because I've invested time and energy in getting resources and asking for support. But it's so powerful when your parent can model something that you can learn from and practice.
I don't think we always have those conversations either. Sometimes not, but the parent, or with ourselves, really. And I think no one's got a playbook. We're always figuring it out, really. I think we all are.
Yeah.
If I was to say to you, so we're talking about how hard it is to be a mum, how challenging it can be, how you're faced with like all kinds of emotions at different points in time, how working as much can bring you joy, can fill your own energy store up. It's also very tiring to come home and then having to be present and available for your family and your children. If we were to do one thing that could help us be more present or more present mothers, what do you think we could do?
I think it's asking ourselves the uncomfortable question, what are we willing to let go of? Because I'm tired of hearing we can do it all. It's like we can, but at what cost? So what are we willing to let go of in order that we have the resource to be able to support, understand, like be there for our kids and enjoy them? And sometimes that might be, not earning as much money, and then resetting your expectations around what really are the priorities in terms of how you want to live. Sometimes it might be like saying not now to an opportunity that seems really exciting, because actually, if we ask ourselves the hard question, it will take us further away from time that we really want to prioritize being with a family. I'm really somewhat obsessed with like protecting kind of quality of my sleep at the moment. So often for me, like evening opportunities, it has to be like a hell yes to say yes. Otherwise, it's just not worth it. I'd rather prioritize trying to have a really good night's sleep, as boring as it might sound, because it just helps me feel better able to navigate the day. So it's, yeah, for me, it would go back to that. What are you willing to let go of, or perhaps say not now to? It doesn't have to be so black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say?
What would I say? So what am I willing to let go of? I think is perfection. So for me, I have a really strong inner perfectionist. I know her very well. And so there's times where, it gets in the way of doing anything. And I think I've learned to basically, nothing can be perfect, and nothing is perfect actually. But, like when it comes to like how Anya dresses herself to school. So she's 3, but I don't dress my child. She dresses herself, even at this age. She will choose her clothes. And sometimes she goes to nursery wearing like 2 dresses, one like a skirt, one like a dress. a baseball cap that doesn't belong to her, it belongs to her dad, Wellington boots. And I'm looking at that thinking, is there something else you might like to wear? But then part of me is like, well, no, you know what? If that's what you want to wear, you wear that to school and you enjoy yourself. So I think it's like letting go of like perfectionism or expectation. You know, I think when you're a mum, everyone's got an opinion, rightly or wrongly, whether they come from a good place or not, around like how something should be done. Like the other day, I said, you know, Anya eats, she's got an amazing appetite. And I don't know if this is healthy, but yesterday she had her record breakfast. She ate, and I'm not exaggerating, she only eats the whites, but 5 eggs, a bowl of porridge, a slice of toast, and half an apple. That was her breakfast in one sitting. And I didn't want to say like stop eating, but when I was telling somebody else that, and I said, oh, and before she goes to bed, she eats a banana and a satsuma, and they were like, do you think she should be eating that much fruit before they go to bed? Well, it's better than biscuits, isn't it? I think it's not that bad. So I think it's letting go of the idea of doing it right, because I think that's pressure that we don't need. And I think there is something around letting go of expectations. You know, for me, it's like expectations of other people or what you think you should expect from yourself. And then it just feels a little bit easier.
But it sounds like your daughter and Ethan would get on like a house on fire because that kid can eat.
That's another thing that we should do as mums, you know. I think it's almost like I do find when I'm around another mum with a child of the same age, life gets a bit easier. They understand you in a way that other people don't. So maybe that's a business idea of somehow how to connect mothers, even with their child in tow, so you can just exist a bit easier.
Yeah, I've heard of workplaces. When I lived in Silicon Valley, there were definitely workplaces where they would put on nurseries so you could bring your kid to work every day. And, you know, it also has the secondary benefit of building like community around children and workplace. And I think there's nothing more powerful than kind of seeing a mum as a mum. My little one came to visit me at the office the other day, and it was amazing, like for me to be able to show him around where I'm based. And he's since then, you know, he's only 3, but he's saying, well, Mummy, I'm going to make you something to put next to your desk, because he saw that some of his brother's pictures were already up by my desk. So now he wants to do the same. And I think it's great for them to understand what it is that we do and where we are, so that they can imagine us and that they can be a part of that. I'm not sure how coaching conversations would work with a kid in the background. And I remember when, you know, there've been times when the boys have been sick and trying to sort of do a dance around that. And typically it is like, sorry, I'm not going to be able to coach today. But there have been other instances where they've been so ill that they've just been like passed out on the floor behind me under a blanket, and it's been totally fine.
Well, I have one last thing to ask you. If you had a piece of advice for anybody that's listening in, perhaps a mother that's also feeling the weight of motherhood, what would you say?
Talk about it. Don't suffer in silence. I think that's a lonely and scary place to be. So reach out to another mum, whether that's a friend or your own mum, if you're able to have that conversation, or just another woman who can support you and talk about it, because I can guarantee that you won't be on your own. And a problem shared is definitely a problem halved. And there is, just as you've highlighted today, Emma, like there is no textbook way. We're all trying to do the best we can, and we make loads of mistakes, but we're living and learning. And as we're living and learning, that gives our kids permission to do the same. So not to be that perfectionist, but to just try and experiment and get messy. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
I had a great time.